Welcome to everybody watching on YouTube, and welcome to everybody else who's watching. My name is Humble the Poet, and you are at Panic to Peace. I am your host, Humble the Poet, and the first thing you need to know about me is I do not know how to use a steamer. As you can see by my outfit, I am Team Iron, and my hotel had a steamer, and I don't even know what those are. So I will be wrinkly for the entire night, but that's the theme. The theme of this is we're human, we're sloppy, we're wrinkly, and that's okay. Perfectionism is not a friend to our peace, and we don't gotta be perfect. We can have wrinkly suits, and that's gonna be okay. This is Panic to Peace, and one of the ways that we're gonna have peace is accepting ourselves as we are, and I know a lot of you are Team Iron. I'm hashtag Team Iron. I'll never use a steamer again. It's just outrageous. But I want you to know what we can expect from this amazing event today. I am live from Charleston, South Carolina in Sage Studios in a beautifully air-conditioned room right now, and I am feeling fantastic, and I can see all your lovely faces. We have an amazing event today. We have an amazing guest list of people who are going to be very honest and very vulnerable about the type of anxieties they feel, what they've done to improve their relationship with anxiety. And what we're going to do is 2 hours for the free event. You know, a lot of you signed up for your free spot. You're going to get 2 hours, all the beautiful meat and potatoes of all of that. And then we're going to have a 1 hour VIP workshop. What means this is important is, and I'm sure a lot of you are already on your wellness journey, and what you realize is you can read or hear something very inspiring, and it hits us up here. An inspiring quote hits us up here. Good advice hits us up here. But it doesn't make its way down here. It doesn't really make its way down here. And the reason for that is our body takes time to catch up to our brain. And where things can make sense to our brain, our body requires practice to believe it. I like to think about it along the lines of when you're a child and your parents are like, jump in the pool. I got you, I got you. You can trust your parents, but your body's like, no way, we're not jumping. And even if you did jump in the pool for the first time and they did keep up their end of the promise and you feel safe, what ends up happening when you get back out? You're still a little bit scared. You might have to jump into the pool 10 times for your body to actually trust that things are safe. So it's the same thing. We're going to have 2 hours of great conversations, and a lot of it's going to make sense, and a lot of it's going to feel good, but we have to follow that up with practice. Practice makes progress. Progress is better than perfection. And that's what we're going to do in the second hour. In the second hour, we're going to have one of our guests, Angel Rodriguez Trinidad. I love saying her full name because her initials are Art. She is the creator of Passion Planner, and she's going to show us some really good journaling prompts, and we're going to do them on the spot. We're going to practice them on the spot, and then you can feel the anxiety melting from you. And then I, Humble the Poet, the guy in the wrinkly suit, am going to do a presentation called The Recipe for Resilience. And again, practical things that we can practice to increase our resilience. So the only way to get into the VIP is you don't have to be a VIP. You just got to get the book. You get the book, fill in the form, and we give you that extra hour. That's all we got to do. The book, what we're celebrating. Oh, I see people showing their books right now. That is amazing. Amazon showed up on time. I appreciate you guys. Seriously, for all those people who got books, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm not done asking you for favors. I'm also going to ask you to leave a review on Amazon, an honest review on Amazon, even if you're just reviewing my beard. It is shiny. It is real. This book is bearded for your pleasure. So if you have signed up for the VIP, you just stay on. And if you haven't, I'm going to spend the next 2 hours convincing you that you should. That's what we're going to be doing. We have amazing conversations. We have some live interviews. We have some pre-recorded interviews. We even have an interview that they pre-recorded and then I spliced myself in to pretend like it was a real conversation. I'm not going to tell you which one, but I'm going to let you guess. Again, we're not here to be perfect. We're here just to make progress. We're here to be real, warts and all, and this is what we're here to celebrate. And yeah, it'll be a fun game if you guys can figure that out. But we have an awesome selection of people. We have my very dear friend, Lily Singh, and she's going to be talking about being a control freak, because we all know we don't have any control freaks in the room, obviously, but if there are any control freaks, or if you know any control freaks, invite them into the chat, and how much that feeds our anxiety. We have the wonderful Lewis Howes talking about anxiety around our finances and money, which is a very real thing. We have the very handsome and the very British Matthew Hussey talking about anxiety around our relationships. We have Charlamagne the God talking about generational trauma, talking about growing up with trauma, recognizing trauma, and discovering how that impacts us in our lives. We have Angel talking about journaling and exploring ourselves. We have an amazing guest by the name of Mindbody Nina. She's going to be on live. She's going to be talking about a lot of the work that she's done with her clients and coaching and helping them, and then also how she had to apply her own learning when she received a devastating diagnosis. And last but not least, we have Rosanna Pansino, who has her own baking show on HBO. It's going to be doing some really great stuff. She's been doing an amazing work around discovering who she authentically is. She's been on YouTube for the last 15 years, and we had an amazing conversation. So all of this is just going to be super exciting. The goal for this guest list was to have just real people, or at least people who are willing to have real conversations about what they're struggling with, what they're going through. Because it's important. The last thing I wanted to do was to be like, oh, let's have some people who just appear perfect all the time. And they're like, well, I don't have anxiety. Let me show you what's wrong with you. And that's not the case. The goal here today is for all of us to realize we're all in the same boat. And the only way people can connect is through being vulnerable, being honest about what we're going through and what we're doing. And one of the real things that we got to talk about, and this is your first lesson of the day, is what is anxiety? And I think this is really important because we treat anxiety like it's dandruff, or it's cooties, or it's herpes. It's some kind of condition that we have to hide from the rest of the people, or we're like, I have it, nobody else has it. When really, anxiety is a signal. Anxiety is just a signal asking you to pay attention. It's a cousin to other signals that are telling you to pay attention. For example, hunger. Hunger tells you to pay attention to something. We don't say, oh my God, I ate 8 hours ago. Why am I hungry again? What's wrong with me? We understand our relationship with that signal, what it's letting us know. And we're like, hey, those hunger pains, that little rumbling in my stomach, that's there to tell me something important. It's the same thing with anxiety. But the only difference with anxiety right now, we've kind of been taught to do 3 different things. We've been taught to avoid it, distract from it, or medicate it. Now imagine, for example, anxiety was the smoke alarm in your house. What we've been taught to do is rip that smoke alarm once it starts going off, take out the battery and throw it in the trash. Today, From Panic to Peace is going to show us, hey, what if instead of doing all of that, we look for the smoke? And what if we address the smoke for once and for all, and then we won't have to have that annoying little blare in our head? And I think that's really interesting because we've been having an amazing last 10 years where mental health has become normalized, but we may have gone too far the other way. Now we're all diagnosing ourselves and turning mental health kind of into astrology. You know, where people are like, oh my God, I'm a Scorpio. It's okay that I'm toxic. Now we're like, oh my God, I have ADHD. Oh my God, I have anxiety. And that's it. We just have diagnosed ourselves and that's the end of it. And I want you to understand that, no, that is actually the beginning of the conversation. So one of the first things I want us all to commit to, if you don't take anything else away from this next 2 hours, is we are no longer going to say, I'm anxious. Instead, we're going to do what I learned from the wonderful Mel Robbins, is we're going to say, I feel anxious because. So we are no longer identifying as anxious. That is no longer an identifying word that we're going to use. Instead, we're going to say, I feel anxious because. And that gets us on a journey to better discover who we are and how we're feeling. And I think this is really important because we're not doing ourselves any favors by saying, I have anxiety or I am anxious. We are not our emotions. We are not our thoughts. I'm going to say that one more time. We are not our emotions. We are not our thoughts. We are having emotions. We are having thoughts. And they can come in waves and they can go away in waves. So when we feel anxious for different reasons. We may feel anxious because we opened a bill we can't afford. We may feel anxious because we drank too much the night before. We may feel anxious because we're excited for From Panic to Peace and we're going to be live with Humble the Poet. There's a million reasons we can feel anxious. But knowing that we feel anxious and given a reason for why we feel anxious is extremely, extremely important. Now, why did I write this book? For one simple reason. I hate asking for help. My last book, I had to reach out to people and asked to get on podcasts, asked to do interviews, asked people to put in a good word, even for this event. And I felt so much anxiety around asking people because I was afraid. I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid people letting me know that I wasn't worth their time. And I really wanted to have a deeper understanding for that. And what I realized is I was fantasizing a life where I didn't have to ask for help anymore. And that's the first problem. On this mental health journey, we fantasize about rearranging our lives in a way where we don't have to deal with the hard stuff anymore. We ask for an easier life. We ask for a lighter life when really, realistically, we need to be asking to get stronger. In mental health, mental strength, we often refer to it as resilience. So what I realized was I can't ask to be in a career where I don't have to ask people for help. I have to practice asking more people for help. I have to voluntarily put myself in situations to feel rejection, because only that way will I actually permanently address this stuff. Again, I was avoiding. Remember the three things that we do when we have anxious feelings? We avoid, we distract, we medicate. I was just avoiding. And writing this book allowed me to have a deeper understanding of why I was feeling the things that I was feeling. And it allowed me to have a lot more grace and niceness for myself. Everybody who's tuned in right now has anxious feelings towards something. And it can be different things. It could be anything from experiencing heights, to public speaking, to what's in their bank account, to their dating life, to being a new parent, to taking care of their parents, to starting a new project, to starting a new job, to moving to a new city. There are a million things that could bring up anxious feelings. And the goal here is to better improve our relationship with our anxiety so we can focus on our resilience and we can handle this stuff once and for all. Now, let's start with our first guest. The big thing I didn't want to do here, and the thing that's really important, is I did not want to just make this very heady and make this very philosophical and be like, look, as long as you change your perspective, you'll all feel better. Because that doesn't acknowledge real life. And I think one of the biggest things that we're all dealing with in this extremely, extremely, extremely uncertain world is a lot of anxiety around our finances. You know, the money that we had yesterday may not be the money that we had tomorrow. The things that we can afford today may not be the things that we can afford next month. We just don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty around our finances, and I think that's really important for us to acknowledge. So I'm going to grab my trusty clicker so I can figure out what the next slide is. Money is a real-life problem, and I'm not here to minimize it. You can't meditate your way out of financial problems. So my first guest is Lewis Howes, and he had just released a book last week all about money. Now, me personally, I started this journey as Humble the Poet. I was $80,000 in debt. And I didn't fix that debt through, affirmations and inspirational talks. I had to pull up my sleeves and work. But the first thing I had to do was address the identity that I had around my financial issues and the struggles that I was facing. In the book, I have a chapter called More Money, Less Problems, and we explore two very important words, the D word, debt, and the B word, budget. Now, all anxiety relates back to chaos, not being in control, and the unknown. That's us being in debt. One of the antidotes to anxiety that we can deal with is structure. Structure allows us to have some semblance of control. That would be a budget. Now, I met Lewis a long time ago, simpler times, before we knew what a pandemic was. And our friendship was built on our aspirations, our failed love lives, and we would just sit there and complain about all the things that we did. And I want to thank Lewis for being a part of this conversation, and I'm really excited for you guys to see what he has to say about financial anxiety. So enjoy.
Hey guys, Lewis Howes here, and I'm so grateful to be here, part of Humble's experience with you all. So thank you for having me, Humble, and just been a big fan of what Humble has created for so many years since we met. I think we met like 8 years ago or something. And we've had some amazing journeys together. He's been on the School of Greatness a number of times. We went to Poland together and did some cool experiences with Wim Hof and jumping in frozen rivers. So I have so many good memories with Humble. And today I'm going to be talking about your relationship with money. And I'd like to put this question in front of you as an exercise. If money walked into the room right now, how would your relationship be with money? How would you react? How would you respond? How would it make you feel? Would you feel emotionally at peace and grateful? Would you feel anxious and want to hide and run away and not talk to money? If it was a person and money walked in, how would you respond? And I want you to be thinking about during this session your relationship with money. Because money is a huge source of anxiety for people. And where does someone start if they always felt stressed about it? Where should we begin? It's like, I don't even know. I don't know where to invest or how to make it or how to manage it. It seems like it's confusing. And a lot of anxiety around money comes from feeling like it's never enough. Like, I don't know how to pay these bills and I'm in debt and there's never enough to go around. And so Humble has sent me some questions that I wanted to share with you all and kind of respond. And one of the questions is, what's one habit that helps people feel more at peace financially? There is, in my book, Make Money Easy, which is all about creating financial freedom and living a richer life. It's really about living a rich and abundant life on the inside. It's almost not about making money at all. And it's about feeling abundant, about feeling financially free by feeling peaceful in your life and feeling enough of who you are. And so one habit that helps people feel more at peace financially is almost a counterintuitive shift in how you think. And most people think, this is how I felt early on. When I was broke on my sister's couch, I was like, when I make money, then I can help people out and give to people when I have more money. But I am broke right now. I don't have any money. And the first habit in the book, Make Money Easy, is the mindset habit. And the whole idea of this is that the key to abundance is living generously in your life. Being a generous giver in your life unlocks the gateway to abundance. Now, it doesn't mean you have to give your money away to people. It doesn't mean that every time someone asks you for money, you have to give it to them. But what it does mean is thinking, how can I be a generous giver? How can I be grateful for what I have? How can I be resourceful in helping other people? And again, it doesn't need to be money, but how can I be a giver, an active listener, someone who cares, someone who responds, someone who shows up for someone else? When we live in this state of giving and being generous, it is a habit that will support you in creating more financial peace because it gives you inner peace. And many of you might have heard that inner peace is the new rich, and I think that's true. It's painful to me, and I've experienced this many times in my past, where I've had money in the bank, a sense of financial security, but have felt more scarce than ever before, more stressed out than ever before, more anxious than ever before, more feeling like people are trying to take advantage of me and use me and abuse me, all these different things. And if we aren't able to feel emotionally safe in our nervous system with money conversations and with money around us, then it's not a rich life. It's not an abundant life. In the beginning of this conversation, I said, I want you to imagine your relationship with money. What does that relationship look like? If it's anxious, then we've got some things we need to start doing to reduce that anxiety to create more peace. And again, many people carry financial trauma, whether from their upbringing, past mistakes, or their fear of success. And Humble wanted me to share what's the first step to breaking free from that. The first step is understanding your money story. In the book, I talk about really getting clear and writing down the moments and the memories that created the biggest wounds and belief system around money conversations in your life or money moments in your life. I have different memories where I stole from people, I stole from stores, I stole money, people stole from me. I had to pay for friends one time when I was a kid. All these kind of memories shaped my beliefs around money and created money anxiety in my nervous system. And some of it was helping drive me to create more, but it didn't make me feel peaceful when I had it. And others made me feel like I doubted myself and my abilities to go earn more at different times. And that didn't make me feel abundant or peaceful either. And again, success often comes with burnout or pressure sometimes. And one of the things is you want to figure out how to personally balance wealth with mental well-being. And when you can understand your money story, these moments, these memories that created wounds or little traumas, I want you to write them down, just like I shared a few of these with you. And I want you to write down these sayings that you heard from your parents, or your friends, or society that maybe shaped your belief around money today. And when you can write those things down, that's the first step. And just be aware, separating yourself from the moments and the memories by writing them down. You know, our beliefs influence our behaviors, and that creates a money style for us. So your money story influences your money style. And so you might be asking yourself, or I would ask you actually, what type of money style do you have? When you have money that comes to you, do you put it in the bank and never use it? Do you spend it right away? Do you feel anxious when you have it? Do you spend it everywhere and you're constantly in debt and you have credit cards, but you don't know how much debt you have? Just ask yourself, what style am I? Do I feel secure with money? Do I feel grateful with money when it comes, when it goes? When you can assess your money story and get clear on your money style, you can create a new strategy around money. But we have to start healing from some of these money wounds. So if someone walks away from my book, Make Money Easy, with just one lesson to reduce financial anxiety, Humble wanted me to ask, what would be the one thing you would want that lesson to be? For me, I talk about this idea that the energy connected with money wounds attracts a similar energy to it. And on page 73, I talk about our relationship with money is an emotionally intense and intimate relationship, one you may not even know you're aware of. And I share a few keys on how to take yourself to money therapy. And the first one we talked about is identifying your money triggers. Identifying these triggers, writing them down. And I think you can really start to heal and process when you talk to a safe person. If you have a therapist, great. If you have a friend that you really trust, a mentor, a coach, whoever it might be, I think in the future, maybe there'll be money therapists out there that you could talk to, but I'm not sure if they have that out there yet. But if you could find someone to talk to in a safe space, it's going to allow you to process these things. It's going to allow you to get it out. And so it's not just stuck inside of you, so you can start to feel heard and seen. And that's a big step in allowing you to overcome the money wounds and traumas. One thing that I needed to learn how to do, which was probably the hardest thing for me to do, which was the next step, which is forgiving myself and others. When I was a kid, I felt like I was a really bad kid. I stole, I did things, I said mean things. I said mean things about myself. I tried to hurt myself in many different ways. And as an adult, I started to reflect on those memories, and I realized, man, I really did some nasty things to me and to others. I had a belief system that wasn't supporting or encouraging and creating peace. I need to forgive myself. I need to forgive others who did things to me that I was frustrated with and held on to for so long. I need to really practice this. It's one of the hardest things that I did was learning to forgive myself. An exercise that I have done multiple times, which is probably, for me, hasn't been enjoyable to do and might sound a little weird and might sound a little like, I don't know, vulnerable, is literally being quiet in the bathroom, in the mirror, and looking myself in the eyes and having a conversation with myself. It may sound a little weird or a little whatever out there, but I've looked myself in the eyes and times where I've been heartbroken for how I've acted, for things I've said, for how I've hurt people, but really how I've said nasty things to myself. And I've had to learn how to forgive me over and over again. And it started with forgiving the old me who did things where I know now I was just trying to survive, or I was in fear, or I was hurt and I didn't know how to process those things. So now with these tools, I've learned how to forgive the past me and other people. It doesn't mean I'm, repeating these patterns or allowing someone else to repeat these patterns. We also have to create boundaries. But that has been a very healing part of money therapy for me. And you've got to take yourself to money therapy. And the next thing would be, after you forgive yourself, is really practicing overcoming these triggers, and then motivating yourself to grow. Once we've felt uncertain, we felt stuck, we felt trapped, we felt blocked from creating more peace or abundance or financial freedom or anything in life, we've got to start saying, how can I shift my beliefs and my behaviors to have daily consistent actions where I stick to my word so I have more integrity with myself and I can feel more confident in me by showing up consistently. And when we do this daily over time, we can start to believe something else is possible. And that's what we talk about, motivating yourself to grow. It's really hard to grow when you've only known one main way of thinking and behaving throughout your life. And sometimes this can be painful to shift these old kind of beliefs and behaviors. And money stress is real. I get it. We tell ourselves that making more will fix it, but as Humble puts it in his book on Anxious, spending money to relieve the stress of not having enough is like dipping your Band-Aids in hot sauce before putting them on your cuts. And that seems kind of painful if you did that. So the truth, earning more is great. I enjoy earning more. But if we don't fix our relationship with money and our relationship with stress, the anxiety never really goes away. It only, in fact, amplifies your anxiety, because the more you make, it amplifies more of what's inside of you and the stress that you have. If you have peace inside of you, it could give you more peace. And that's where my book, Make Money Easy, comes in. Again, this is all about helping you to take control of your relationship with money. If you're looking to make money easier in your life, not make easy money, because that doesn't work, but making money easier in your life and feeling abundant, living generously so you can receive more effortlessly, that's what this book is all about. Make money easy, create financial freedom, and live a richer life. And Humble's book on Anxious, that'll change how you handle stress and uncertainty in every part of your life. Because as a reminder, peace of mind isn't just about dollars and cents, it's about perspective. Again, my name is Lewis Howes. I'm grateful to be here. I hope you've enjoyed this. Big thanks to Humble for having me on, and I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you so much, Lewis. That was epic. I think what I really loved about Lewis's book, when I got my copy, was I thought it would be just like pragmatic. Here's how you get the dollars. Here's what you invest in. Here's what you do. But he really challenges the story that we have in our heads. A lot of the reason we can't move forward sometimes is the stories that we tell ourselves in our heads. And he has a really good example in his book about if you love animals. He's like, if you make more money, you can support more animals. You can support more pet shelters. You can do all of that. And it really was a question of figuring out who you authentically are, and then allowing that to drive your story when it comes to money. And I think that's extremely important. Now, in the book, I have a chapter called More Money, Less Problems. And then in the back, what we've done, I think for those who have their book in their hand, you may or may not seen, I have little QR codes. And in these QR codes, we have bonus chapters. And the bonus chapter here is called Buy Shit, Be Anxious. And it is around the idea of commercialism and making purchases. And one of my favorite pieces of money advice that someone gave me was, don't buy the thing that will get you the thing. So pretty much saying, if you want a fancy car, don't spend your money on the car, spend your money on the investment that will generate you the income to get you the car. And if we think about how we spend money in relation to our anxiety, we're spending money right now on medicating, avoiding, and distracting. For example, your Netflix subscription. For example, our morning coffee. What we're doing is we're investing in the thing that will temporarily soothe our anxiety, and this business is built around that. And then what ends up happening is once we feel the anxiety again, we got to buy more. So I love this idea of buy the thing that will get you the thing. So what we're really paying for is we want to feel better. We want to soothe ourselves from anxious feelings. And the best way to do that is to feel our feelings. So I'm going to put a radical idea out there. investing in this book, which is about the same price as one cocktail in New York City, where I live, will get you the thing that will get you the thing. This is, as my friend put it, 50 different therapy sessions in one book. So invest in the thing that will get you the thing. Invest in this, and then you'll end up not having to spend money on other things that you think you need to soothe yourself. Now, another really massive source of anxiety that we all have is around wearing the masks, trying to fit in places that we don't have a choice being in, trying to be somebody that we're not. You know, presenting ourselves to the world, whether it's on social media, at work, at school, to our in-laws, families, to anybody that doesn't make us feel safe that we can't be ourselves. And I think that's a really important one, and I had a really important conversation with Rosanna Pansino about that. See, people can't accept who we really are if they don't meet who we are. And we can't be ourselves if we don't know ourselves. And I think this is really important. In order for us to improve our relationship with the world on the outside, which creates so much tension and anxiety for us, we have to improve how we feel on the inside. And my conversation with Rosanna, we really explored this because Rosanna's been on YouTube forever, and she's made so many different transitions. She's been a part of so many really interesting conversations, debates, movements when it came to the online space. And could you imagine, you know, if you read the comment sections on your own Instagram posts, imagine that times 100 and what she's had to deal with. And I met her many years ago at an event in New York City. And Rosanna, without even speaking in hyperbole, she's like 5'1". And Lily pointed her out to me and said, see that woman over there? That is the biggest boss you're ever going to meet. And she has created an amazing empire around baking, cooking, and now she started a new podcast called Rodiculous, and she's been doing some really amazing work. And she would always send me all her baking supplies so I could bake cookies and stuff with my niece. My niece has since grown into a teenager and is too cool for me, but I still look back at those days where we used to bake cupcakes together and have our aprons, and it was fantastic. So the conversation that I had with Rosanna was on easing anxiety, embracing your true self. Just the art of becoming who you authentically are. And no one else can teach you how to do that. You can only do that yourself by looking inwards. So enjoy this conversation.
What I see nowadays, this is more for content
back in
creators
the golden
online,
age of TV,
but
when
it
there was
could be
Game of
applied for other
Thrones,
things.
and
But
I was staying with
what I
Lily.
see nowadays is people will jump on YouTube and start creating content, and they're so obsessed with the views. They just views. They obsess about it. It's all they want. Algorithm, views. Views equals my success. And that mindset comes from, you know, when they start on YouTube, that's the only thing they have going on in their lives. Their main business and only business and focus is their YouTube channel or their streaming channel. And so it's all about views, and it's very narrow minded. But once you get to a place, like I was saying, to diversify, to like plant different trees, plant different plants, like maybe you become an author and start writing books on the side. And so then you have a venture over here in the literary world where you have a whole business of publishing. Maybe you start writing TV shows on the side and you're selling TV shows on the side. Maybe you invest into products and companies and philanthropy, you know, like organizations that are doing things that you really love. And so you just start to spread yourself out, like you were saying, in different areas so that your whole worth and being is not placed in one place. I think that is so unhealthy, and that's for anything. You know, you don't want to place all your happiness, all your focus, everything into one place. And I do understand for hustle, for entrepreneurship, that for something to grow, you do need to focus a lot of attention there. And I do think that, like, especially for startups, you got to get that startup energy going. But you always want to be looking how to do things smarter, not harder. And I think if you hit a point where it starts to shift, it can get really, yeah, looking back now, I can see where when I was grinding a little bit too hard before I had balance. And now it's just a beautiful place. And I want that for everyone, because now we have so many things going on that, like I said, if you upload a video and it gets 1 million views or it gets 100,000, I don't care. I'm, I see it as like, okay, let's play with some things, let's tinker some things, but there's so many other things going that there is no stress, there is no anxiety. It's just almost fun, which is how it felt in the beginning.
What I've also realized, even with friends of mine who, I have friends who are doctors, who are lawyers, who are like high earners, but they may not be doing something that lights their fire. You start to realize like, oh, now all that money you're making is going to be used to medicate the fact that you're on a path that you don't enjoy. And I always think about once I got hired to write a speech for the head actuary at MetLife Insurance. So I had no idea why they hired me to do this, but I had a meeting with the guy to get to know him, because I was going to write his like introduction speech to the society. And I found out that on the side, not for money, he was making action figures. He was making toys for his favorite comic book characters that were never famous enough to get their own toys. So it's like maybe this character was in a Superman comic once, but not enough for anybody to make a toy. He would commission and he would work on these toys and just collect them. And it was just such a beautiful thing to learn about him, which was like he wasn't promoting it, it wasn't on Instagram, he wasn't selling it, but obviously he was spending money, time, energy, and love. And it helped me realize this idea of bringing ourselves back to the joy of creating. And it was just resonating with me as you were talking about making it fun again. Whereas like, life really is this video game, and we wouldn't buy a video game if it was easy, right? We would feel ripped off. It needs to be difficult. And instead of us chasing this culture of like, let's do the most convenient things, let's make things super easy. Now that we're adults, we don't have to listen to anybody else. It's almost like, no, to prepare ourselves, we have to dive even deeper into difficult things. But when we do it voluntarily, it builds resilience. It really makes us stronger. And I was just thinking about that because I said, you're one of the most resilient, strong, bossed up people I know. Um, and I just wanted to know, like, with everything that you do, especially around success, because you're in the attention economy. People have to know you exist for a lot of this to happen. There's always going to be fear of letting people down, maybe letting down a brand, maybe letting down fans, or maybe even letting down yourself if you had certain ideas of what things need to be. How do you show up for that? How do you address that before, during, and after, whether it's setting boundaries or anything else?
I try not to take on more than I can handle. So sometimes a part of that's just wisdom, getting to know yourself over the years. So now I try not to take on more than I can handle and just take on a couple big projects in addition to running the business that I can really sink my teeth into. I try to take care of myself every day so that because when I can take care of myself, then I can fully function to my full potential, getting enough sleep, getting some exercise, eating somewhat decently. Once in a while, I have a treat because, I got a sweet tooth. I also like to celebrate, at parties. So I like to have a few drinks. But in general, I think what's really helped me of not letting people down is I'm really upfront with people now. I am so upfront from the beginning. And it's just led to really deep, authentic connections with people, not just in my personal life friendships, but also in business. Now, when I go into business with something, people know what they're going to get right away with me. I am very upfront that I'll tell people, here's where I'm at, here's how much time I can invest in it. This is my personality. I'm a person to go all in. And I'm also very upfront about my faults that I don't want to say a fault, but I'm dyslexic and I have ADHD. So there's strengths with those things, and there's also things I'm not great at. And I've hired team members to fill in where I'm not great with that. But I've realized that when I communicate that to everybody, business partners, friends, and even my community, I feel like they can really understand where I'm at better. And I feel like the pressures then alleviate. So it's like, hey, if I tweet something and I've spelled 10 things wrong, or I've tweeted something and it's not a sentence, right? My community knows I'm dyslexic. So I don't have this anxiety that I need to be perfect and type perfectly. Or, I write a book, I send it into the publishers, and they're like, these 4 things aren't sentences. And I'm like, okay, we'll fix it. And it just relieves that because we're all kind of on the same page. And
Was that always the case? Were you always able to be straight up, or was there a time where this gave you anxiety just to?
yes,
Because I do believe clarity is kindness, and often
yeah,
people please when we're people pleasing, we think we're being kind by telling people what we think they want to hear versus
yes.
the actual truth. So I just want to hear a little bit about like how you went from, kind of maybe beating around the bush to just like speaking in these straight, clear lines, which is actually even more kind than people assume.
Well, growing up, the stigma was if you were dyslexic that you were stupid. And because I had issues processing, like reading and writing, I was just slower. It took me longer to read things, write things. And at the time, a lot of the teachers in the school I was in, they didn't know what learning disabilities were. They didn't even know what that was. So they just thought I was dumb, I was slower. So when you hear it for years that you're dumb and you're slow, you start to believe it. And it's something that I then tried to hide because I didn't want people to judge me and think that I'm stupid because I didn't feel stupid. I could still follow along conversations. I understood concepts that I thought were very complex. I love math and science, so I just couldn't understand why can I barely read and write, but I'm in AP advanced calculus. Make that make sense. It was a really weird place for me. So I think I hit it even in the workplace. When I got hired, I would not tell anyone when I was diagnosed in college that I was dyslexic. I wouldn't tell anyone when I first got hired because I didn't want them to have a stigma about me, and I didn't want to. And when I would make mistakes, I just would be like, oh, sorry, like, and I wouldn't address them. And I think they didn't understand why they were happening, and I didn't feel confident enough to explain them. um, and it wasn't great for anyone. I think that it just kind of delayed me finding the right fit for my career. I think that it delayed a lot of things, trying to hide it versus embrace it. And I think when I just hit a point, and I wish I could have told myself one of those things, like Humble, when they're like, if you could write a letter to yourself 20 years ago, what advice would you give yourself? And my biggest advice I would just be so open about being dyslexic and having ADHD right away, because there were people even back then when there was less information, there was people that got it. There was still people out there who got it. And like one of my biggest inspirations, Richard Branson, when he came out and was open about being dyslexic and having ADHD, that changed my whole life, because here was someone who was so successful and smart, whose brain works the same way mine does. And he's not stupid. He's incredibly intelligent and so smart and so successful. And I went, hey, just because you're dyslexic or have ADHD, it doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means that your brain works differently. It isn't made for traditional systems. It isn't made for standardized schools, standardized work environments. I'm actually better suited to be an entrepreneur. And learning that changed my life. And I wish that's something I would have, learned sooner.
What I love about it is, the fear that we have is about sharing certain things. Like what you just talked about is there's a fear of actually letting our real self be seen.
Yeah.
And it's that vulnerability. And what we just have to remember is being vulnerable is, we want to be accepted for who we are, but we have to let people see who we are. And there definitely isn't a guarantee that everyone will accept it. And definitely when it comes to certain issues or certain topics like ADHD and
Yeah.
dyslexia, especially 20 years ago, that the conversations weren't as widespread. But I think what I love about this is, first, the first thing that happened was somebody else, Richard Branson, was vulnerable, which encouraged you to be more vulnerable. And I want the listeners to realize this, which is the vast majority of times that you actually take off the mask and become vulnerable with somebody else, you are not going to be judged. Instead, you are inviting them to be vulnerable with you. And that's going to strengthen a connection that is deeper than anything else. And we feel so much anxiety trying to fit in when really, and as Rose said it beautifully in terms of becoming an entrepreneur, we should focus on where we belong. If we don't feel like we fit in here, there's more places. And I'm going to do a cheap plug for the book right now because I do have a quote that says, you may be a social butterfly, but you're in the wrong garden. And I really think when people think about
I
the
love
tension
it.
that they feel, yeah, the tension that we feel because we don't feel like we fit in, maybe you're just in the wrong garden. And as you share who you are and figure out who you are, because you got to know yourself to share yourself, you'll start to find where you authentically belong, who accepts you as you are. And then those connections are going to be worth way more than just a bunch of people liking you. And as you even said, simple things like, and I think this is really important for resilience and courage, support matters. Okay. You
Mm,
need support. Okay.
mm,
Whether it's Mike in the back doing tech support,
yes.
whether it's an editor for a book, we need support. And there is so much courage and so much anxiety melts when we ask for help. And again, it's an opportunity to be vulnerable and build a deeper connection. Um, just in terms of closing, in terms of, moving forward, there's no way that with all the things that you got going on, you're not going to hit stressful moments. You're not going to get drained. You're not going to be uninspired. For other people who are listening right now, trying their best in this, fantastic
Mhm.
dumpster fire of a world that we live in, what is something that you could suggest for them when their battery is just completely depleted and they just need some great words or something to remember?
Wow. Okay. Humble, you're so good at speaking and writing. I love
Oh,
it.
thank
You
you.
really are like a poet. I could listen to you talk and your advice all day. I was thinking a lot about this because we were just talking about like being drained. And I think one of the biggest things for me, as I've learned over the years, is like who you keep closest in your life really affects you. So you want friends that are fun, that support you, they make you feel good, they gas you up when you need it, when you're feeling down. And that makes all the difference because when you have that support system and you're curious, you're trying new ventures in whatever area you're going into, when you have a great group of people around you that love and support, it feels like you can take on anything. And even when moments get a little stressful or whatever, you have a support system, a community there to talk it through, to just be there for you. And I also think what's helped me is taking a step back. Sometimes I like to just take a step back, not physically, just mentally. I'll take the weekend and I'll say, you know what? I'm going to look at everything going on if I feel really stressed. Take a step back, look at the system as a whole. What in the system is stressing me out the most and why? And when you do take that time to just take the step back and identify the system you've created and what things in the system are not working for you, they're not serving you, they are not something you want to maintain, they don't bring happiness, and all it does is create stress and it's just not worth it, then you're able to make decisions and maybe cut that out. Maybe switch directions there. So I think that those are the two things that have like really helped me with feeling drained and burnout is finding good people, finding your people, and being able to step back when you're in that grind and you're feeling, like really stressed, taking just a moment and going, is there anything that I'm doing in my system, in my routine that is nonsense? That is just, I am foolish. Is there anything going on that I am just foolish? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, and usually the answer is yes.
Is that a round of applause I hear? I love that. Can you guys in the Zoom just pretend you guys are clapping and I can hear you guys? That is fantastic. Thank you, Rosanna, so much. I think one of the big ideas that I want to remind everybody from that is burnout isn't just working too hard, and you can't fix that by going on a 2-week vacation on a beach. Burnout is usually a sign that you're not doing enough of the work that matters to you. And nobody gets to tell you what's important to you. You have to do it yourself. I'm supposed to have about 2 minutes to do a long intro to my next guest because we're doing it live. Because we're doing it live, I just want to get him on as soon as possible. And instead of, going ahead in reading a very formal bio. I'll just tell you how wonderful he is. This is my friend Matthew Hussey. I met him through Lewis in Poland when we went to do Wim Hof and sit in the ice. And Matthew was the first one to raise his hand and ask if, what would this do to our extremities? But he says everything in his lovely British accent. He has a lovely, lovely accent. He has a lovely, lovely symmetrical face. I just love speaking to this man. He's so kind. He is so wonderful. I actually have a chapter in the book about procrastination, which is all about procrastinating buying my ticket to go to his wedding in Italy. And as I said, just writing this book was such an amazing journey of trying to be vulnerable. And when you write a book, you're like, oh, should I be saying this stuff? Should I be sharing this stuff? And you're like, no, we'll sort that out later. And then you forget you wrote it, and the next thing you know, it's already printed in the book. So, without further ado, I want to bring Matthew on here and have our live discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, he won't be able to see you, but I can see you. A giant round of applause for Matthew Hussey.
What's up, Humble?
How you doing? I am looking at you. I can see you. Can you see me? We're good?
I can see you. You're quite small for me, but I can see you.
Okay. Oh, am I like, okay. I see the camera's following me. Okay. How you doing, man? Thank you so much for being a part of this.
It's great to be here, man. I'm proud of you. This looks amazing.
Oh, this feels amazing, and it's so amazing knowing that I have great friends like you being a part of this. I don't think I ever got to tell you this, but the last time I was on your podcast, you didn't take it easy on me. You didn't take you didn't take it easy on me. I felt like you were a little too relaxed, and you asked me a lot of hard questions. So we're gonna do the same thing.
My turn now.
Yeah, I've noticed that with some of my podcast friends. I think when you think that when you get on their shows, they're going to be really nice to you, but then they're also just tired of like having to like bite their tongue. So they're like, all right, it's one of my buddies. I can just say whatever I want. And I remember it being a lot more challenging than I was expecting. So we're going to start with the easy questions. And, let's take it from there. We're going to be talking about anxiety in our relationships and, with a focus on the romantic relationships. And as somebody who has a horrible track record, and you are somebody who has found your person, sealed the deal, had one of the most amazing weddings that you had me to be a part of. Thank you so much in Italy. Our guests would love to hear your insights a lot more than mine. So the first question I want to ask you is, has there ever been a time in your own life where anxious feelings almost cost you a connection that matter? And what did you learn from that experience?
Oh, man. I think probably it almost cost me the connection that mattered the most. It almost cost me my connection with my own wife. I think I've been anxious. Well, I've certainly been anxious for most of my life, even before I called it anxiety or before I knew to call it anxiety. And, that anxiety found its way into most things in my life. And one of them was my love life. I would find myself constantly scared of making the wrong decisions. And so for my entire love life, I think the story of my dating life was going from one relationship to another and my anxiety taking over and making me constantly question whether it was the right relationship and feeling scared that I was going to hurt someone else, that I was going to get hurt, and that I was ultimately going to end up with the wrong person. And, I think the way I managed that anxiety was to make sure that no relationship ever lasted longer than 18 months. So when I met my wife, Audrey, that anxiety didn't magically go away. It just showed up in new forms. We were long distance. She was in London. I was in LA. And it scared me to be in a long distance relationship. And my anxiety went there and said, oh, I'm not sure about this. And, I then started to find ways to kind of sabotage it and make life difficult for myself and her. And eventually she felt my anxiety to the point where she had had enough of it. And she could feel that I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, not sure what I was doing. And one day she said to me something I'll never forget. She said, listen, if we go down this road and we have a relationship and in 6 months you decide you don't want me anymore, I'm not right for you, that's okay. You're allowed to do that. Also, I might end up doing that. So neither of us know what's going to happen here. But what I can't allow is for you to constantly be half-arsing it. So if in 6 months you decide this isn't right for you, that's okay. What's not okay is you not giving it a fair try. So either let's give this a try and see what it can actually be and go all in for a few months, or let's call it quits right now. Either way, that's totally fine, but it has to be one of those two things. And it was really special because it was a very clever thing she did, because it lowered the stakes for me to be able to just go all in and feel like I was allowed to do that and I was allowed to change my mind. But at the same time, it raised the bar of what was expected of me, and it made me go all in. So that, if I hadn't been with such an intelligent and confident woman who knew her own standards, that I think I would have lost her over that. But you know, she was brilliant in what she did.
That's such a beautiful thing to hear, because I think it's also like that's the conversation we should be having with ourselves. It's just, you know, giving ourselves grace and saying like, look, at least give it a fair try. Don't betray yourself. And I remember vividly at your wedding, the wedding speeches were like the most pragmatic, grounded in reality. There wasn't any hyperboles. There wasn't like love you forever. They were really grounded. And just from hearing that, you're like, they've been putting in work. They've been through some stuff. There's a resilience to this relationship, and the resilience was earned. It's not like a performative resilience. And I think, you know, in the book, you know, one of the quotes is, you know, relationships aren't here to heal, they're here to reveal. They're here to reveal the wounds, and like some of the anxieties that may have come through your 18-month relationships and just jumping before they got too real. This relationship required you to, like, you know, it served as a mirror and required you to look at it. And I think a lot of that comes from old wounds. So like many of us carry old wounds in our relationships. You know, even when the connection feels right, anxiety kicks in. What are some ways to recognize when it's not the person who's making us feel extra anxious, but it's our past?
Well, I think it's worth looking at whether our anxiety is the common denominator in every situation we find ourselves in. Our anxiety will tell us a story. You know, an example story might be, there's something about this particular person that I feel could be just a bit different. And if it was a bit different, maybe it would be the right person. But you have to challenge yourself and say, is this going to be true with the next person? Am I going to just find this with every single person I'm ever with? Is it really true that there's a person out there where I'll never have any of these feelings with? And by the way, there's what we have to be very careful of is comparing ourselves to other people who don't have the same nervous system disposition as we do. So, for example, I have friends who were like, I met, you know, my person when I was 27, and I never thought I'd be so sure, and then I met them and I never looked back, and I was the most sure I've ever been in my life. And you know, it was at the moment, like people tell stories, I went on a first date and I knew from the first date I was going to marry this person. And now, if you're someone who has a lot of anxiety when it comes to your love life, about your choices, you don't trust yourself, has nothing to do, for me, it had nothing to do with how amazing anyone else was. It had everything to do with me not trusting myself and my own decisions, right? But if that's where you're coming from, then the person who met their person and on a first date decided this is my person and never looked back, that's not your comp. That's a bad comp for you, because they clearly have they've got different engineering than you have. So I think we have to understand I shouldn't compare my level of certainty or my anxieties in a relationship to someone who's built very differently from me or who has very different wounds than me. I have to look at what's my pattern and does that pattern show up consistently in my life? And if it does, then I have to start to look at experimenting with different ways of being that might start to help change that pattern. And that's something that requires, the word I always use is curiosity. We have to start to get curious. What would happen? Take the example I gave. Curiosity, it's hard to make a new belief. It's hard to just believe something new. But what we can do is get curious. I could say to myself, it's hard for me to believe that if I go all in, that I'm going to now not have this anxiety, or I'm going to feel much better in myself about my decisions. But what if I just got curious? What if I was curious about what would happen if I just went all in? Let me see. Let me see if me giving a different energy to this situation and taking the pressure off of everything being perfect all the time, or me never having any insecurities or anxieties about this, or not trusting myself. What if I just allowed myself to throw myself into this? What would happen? I've never really done it before. Let's just see. And I'll tell you right now, what will happen is something new. And it might be good or bad, you don't know, but what will happen is something new. And I believe that new is the goal. Different is the goal. Because if you get a different result, it's like inception. It plants a seed that the way we experience life isn't the only way to experience life. And that can start to become the kind of, curiosity is like the gateway drug to new beliefs.
Oh, that's beautiful. And for those like me who just got lost in his eyes and his accent, what he said was, you don't have a type, you have a pattern. Remember that. That's the one. You don't have it. That's what he was saying to me. He was calling me out. You don't have a type, you have a pattern. I don't last 18 months. I do about a year. Wrapping up here, I feel like, talking about you and your experiences, also talking about what people are feeling from their past. I know a lot of people, and both you and I have talked about this before, feel a lot of anxiety when a relationship ends. We're left with a lot of unanswered questions, and that type of anxiety, it doesn't just stop, it changes. How would you guide someone through a post-breakup spiral when they're feeling like, was I enough?
It's the most common question in the world, especially when someone breaks up with us. It makes us question our worth. It makes us question our value. But I have a fundamental belief that it's not. The hardest times, the times where we really don't feel enough, is when the person who broke up with us isn't an obvious villain. They maybe even represent the kind of person we thought we should be with, and they decided they didn't want to be with us. That's the worst kind of pain, because now we go, oh my God, the kind of person I want is a person I'm not good enough for. And that really, really scares us. But I have a fundamental belief that I believe everyone should take on for themselves, which is that there is such a thing as awesome person, wrong person. You don't have to convince yourself that someone was awful and a villain and didn't deserve me anyway in order to get over them. You can remind yourself that there is such a thing as awesome person, wrong person. The right person for you is the person who truly sees you, who really accepts you, who sees you more deeply than other people perhaps, and signs up for the ride with you. That is by definition the right person. I've missed out on some really awesome wrong people in my life. They weren't my person. My wife now, she's my person. And when you meet your person, it makes a mockery of all those times where you thought you weren't enough because an awesome person didn't choose you.
That is beautiful. I'm going to go text some people at the end of this conversation. But Matthew, you are so generous with your time. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for being on here live. Everybody has been kind enough to be a part of this, and you doing this live, it means the world. It's so great to see you. I hope to see you soon. I hope to be in LA soon, and we will connect. But thank you for everything. Thank you for those insights, and again, just thank you for all that wonderful, the wonderful insights and wonderful time. I'm just thinking about some of the stuff you said. I'm like, man, I need to either speak to Matthew more or avoid him, because that was a little too real.
No, we have to speak. I miss you, brother. I can't wait to hang out, and congratulations on the book, man. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Appreciate you deeply. Everybody, one more round of applause for Matthew. So the first time I ever actually went viral on the internet was like 2 years ago, when in one of my books I said the spark's not real. And it was I guess it went super viral on TikTok because it made people very upset. But I had cited a study around romantic relationships that had lasted over 10 years. And it was also like the spark can actually in itself be anxiety. So I have 2 chapters in the book around our love lives. The first one is anxiety can warp our love lives. And then there's a bonus chapter in the book. So in order to save trees, and I write a lot, there's about 5 or 6 QR codes inside the book. And I saw somebody say they don't know what to do with the QR code. All you got to do is you got to scan with your camera. You see a little yellow button. You press it, and then more chapters will be sent your way, just into your phone. And that way we get to save some trees, and I got to be a little bit more spicy in those bonus chapters. Now, another big theme around all the anxiety that we're talking about is this idea of uncertainty and control. So if any of you guys are watching the news every single day, it can raise our anxiety. And it doesn't raise our anxiety because we like the news or we don't like the news. It's because the level of change that keeps happening makes things seem uncertain. We just don't know what's going to happen. We want a level of surety. And when we don't have that level of surety, things get overwhelming. So what we try to do is we try to control things, right? We are control freaks. We want to control the outcomes. We want to control how things are. We also do things like procrastinate. Procrastinating is a form of control. Overthinking is a form of control. Overthinking is, I'm going to explore this problem that I'm inventing over and over and over, and I'm going to trick my brain into thinking that I'm doing something useful. Now I feel like I'm in control. Remember, you don't have to actually be in control. You just have to feel like you're in control. So one of the ways we do that with anxiety or uncertainty is that we chase control as a way to soothe, even if the control is an illusion. In the book, the analogy I use is we're trying to spin as many plates as possible. And when we relate our anxiety back to our identities, what ends up happening is we say, if I can't spin all the plates, if one plate falls, if I'm not in complete control, I must be a failure. Remember, having anxious feelings does not mean you're a failure. Having anxious feelings means you are a human being and you're reacting to a world that is designed to make us extra anxious. It's not your fault. And you cannot control everything, and you don't have to control everything. Now, I got this far by being a control freak and a workaholic, and I learned that through my friend Lily Singh, who's one of the hardest workers I've ever met. And throughout our journeys, we've been evolving and having a deeper understanding of what it means to be in control of everything, try to control things, and identify ourselves as successful people. So I ended up having a really vulnerable and honest conversation with her about this. And on top of that, what happened while I was filming this interview with her was my credit card was frozen and my Zoom account got downgraded. So in the middle of our conversation, it just cut out because you have a limit on your Zoom. But Lily found a hilarious way to address that. I just wanted you guys to know, this is what we're doing. We have wrinkly suits, and we use the trial version of Zoom to have our conversations. That's really what it's going to be. So please enjoy this conversation with one of my deepest friends, Lily Singh. So just for context, back in the golden age of TV when there was Game of Thrones, and I was staying with Lily, we would throw viewing parties, and Lily's her passion in life is throwing events and charcuterie boards and table settings and all these things that a guy of my limited capacity wasn't even aware people cared about. And so we would throw these events, and Lily loves doing all of it herself. She loves cooking all the food, setting up all the tables, setting up. I think we tried to do a projector once. Just literally everything. So there was no phoning it in, and there was no outsourcing, other than me having to do stuff as well. But there was definitely moments where I said, "Can't we just order pizza?" Or, you have money. Can't we just get?
And you're being very kind because you're leaving out one major detail, and I don't know if it's because you're being kind or you genuinely don't remember it. I wanted to decorate the house like a castle. So I bought this large wallpaper that I wanted to tape to the walls. And I vividly remember Humble looking at me being like, it's been 2 hours of us cutting this wallpaper and taping it to the wall. And I was like, well, it's got to be a castle.
Yeah, and it's just, but I think what I realized about that, the inspirational part for me was like, oh, she takes everything seriously. She does everything, and I noticed that with a lot of high achievers is you guys don't look for the most efficient way to do stuff. You just decide something needs to be done, and you guys just do it the way. A guy like me will sit there, spend 3 days meditating on the easiest way to do it, and you guys have just gotten 7,000 things done. So I realized that was it. Was like, whether it's your work, whether it's your passion projects, whether it's your commitment to helping other people, or whether it's throwing a party that's gonna last exactly 1 hour, you're willing to do all of it, and you want it done exactly the way you envision it in your head. And some people, not me, would refer to those as control freaks. Not me. Some people would.
I would refer to it as a control freak. So,
and that's kind of what I was talking about in the lens of anxiety. Like, a lot of people wear that control freak like a badge of honor. Being hyper organized. Handling everything ourselves, being on top of things. And at some point, that really feeds our anxiety, the anxious feelings that we have. When did that shift happen for you? And if the answer is right now, feel free to admit that. But
you mean the shift of me realizing that's me being a control freak, or that's a need for control?
The need for control, and how that might not be as helpful as
Right.
you originally thought.
Well, let me give some context of first saying that life has brought me to a crossroads at the end of last year, 2024, that I started off my year, and I've been very open and honest about this. I started off my year doing the deepest reflections, journaling work I've ever done. At not a surface level, like a very deep reckoning happened in my life at the top of this year. So much so that one of my goals is to not be performatively vulnerable, but truly. So I actually made sure I had all my journaling stuff in front of me, because this is actually something I've really worked on. So for most of my life, and you kind of touched on this, if you were to say, oh, Lily, you're a control freak, or you have a need for control, or like, why do you feel compelled to decorate your house like a castle? Why do you feel like you have to do this yourself? I think I would have described that as just my personality. I would have been like, I'm a hard worker. I have a vision. I'm passionate about things. That's my personality. It's one of my quirks. It's only at the top of this year when I really had to take an honest look at my tendencies and my patterns and how I keep ending up in the same situations, that I discovered, and through the help of lots of therapy, that I discovered that a lot of those things are tied to fear, which is actually why I love your chapter in your book about the need for control, because it totally reinforces all the things I'm learning right now, which is like, these things do come from a place of fear, and everybody has unique trauma. And for whatever reason it may be, people are the way they are. And so for me, it's 3 things that I've learned make me feel like I have to control everything. One is a fear of abandonment or rejection, which right now you should be asking yourself, why did you pick the worst possible career if you have this fear of abandonment and rejection? Right. The second thing is I have a need for predictability. Like, uncertainty makes me very uncomfortable. Whether it's a small thing, whether it's a big thing, my brain really likes black, white, yes, no, right, wrong, and anything that's the gray area. My body actually has like a visceral reaction to something that's uncertain. And the last thing is, and I think a lot of, especially kids of immigrants, or like a large range of people can probably relate to, but I've always tied my achievements to my identity. So now when we look at the thing like the Game of Thrones example, when we look at fear of abandonment and rejection, it's like, I don't want people to leave me or reject me. So I'm going to do the most amount of things to make this experience really cool. I'm going to show people that when they come to my house, they're not just watching Game of Thrones. They're going to have the best experience, and Lily throws the best party. So they make sure they keep coming to my house and they keep being my friend. Like, it sounds kind of unhinged to say it out loud, but that is the thought process in my brain, which is like, let me show people all the things I can do so they don't abandon me, so they don't reject me, and so they don't leave me, and so they don't go to someone else's Game of Thrones party, heaven forbid. The way I would cry. The need for predictability is just like, if I do it all myself, then I know exactly how it will turn out. If I delegate it, there's a risk of like the person not doing it. If I leave Humble here alone with this wallpaper, I could come back and he could not have done it the way. So like, I have to do it all myself so I can know for certain how it's going to get done. And the last thing is just tying my identity to my achievements is like, I'm not a nice person who throws events for my friends. No, I made my house a castle for Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? And this is like a really kind of silly example, but it kind of, those things seep into every part of my life. And I've really tried to work on them because I don't, listen, I'm not naive into thinking that I'm going to suddenly become a person that doesn't need any control, but at the very least, what I would like to get better at is picking and choosing the things that I can behave like that with. I think there's some things in my life, like an upcoming film, repairing an important relationship in my life, where I'm like, okay, you want to like put 1,000% energy, you need a little bit of predictability there, you need a little bit of certainty, sure. But I can't be treating everything like that.
Yeah.
Was that a rambling answer? Sorry, but that's kind of all the things I've been working on.
No, I think that was a beautiful answer. And I think, you really touched upon the next question I was going to ask, which was like recognizing that fear can be behind this. And, I think for a lot of people watching, and I can just tell even based on the stuff I posted on social media, it's like whenever I mention control freaks or the need for control, a lot of people identify with that. And I think a lot of it does have to do with, as you said, we think these things are our identity. Someone comes to this party, like, oh, Lily's this. And what I realized even in my own life was what ended up being more damaging for me wasn't the, criticisms of other people. It was the compliments. If somebody complimented me on something that may not even been authentic to me, it's like, oh my God, you build such great castles. Now, like, oh my God, I should build more castles.
Right. Totally. Yes,
yeah.
totally.
It's the positive stuff. And it's really interesting that you said, like, in being in careers like this, where it's like you have wins and you have losses, and you think the losses are the bad ones. You're like, no, the wins can be worse, especially if you did it once, you won, didn't expect to win, and now everybody wants you to, or you feel everybody wants you to keep doing this, and you start building your own cage.
Right.
And anytime you feel like you deviate from that, I think it's been really interesting. Now, you said fear of uncertainty, and what I really appreciate about it, the way you did it, is you started talking about like you wanted things to be black and white, and now, as you said, like focusing on where you can achieve some certainty. So it's like, it sounds like you've made a better relationship with the gray in between.
100%. Yeah, my therapist, if she could put this on a t-shirt, I would wear it. It's literally, you have to live in the gray area. Her number one thing is you have to live. So flexibility in terms of thinking has been a really big goal of mine. And I've actually so proud of myself. I've made major strides just to be flexible and let go of control sometimes, or understand that not everything has to fit into one of two boxes. No. Like there's actually a ton of other options, and just flexibility. Actually, on my vision board is this brain that is made of rubber to be like flexible thinking. And so I've made major strides. And I didn't write no book on being unanxious, but I can share some of the things I've kind of done. But it's again, really much so aligned with the chapter that you wrote on this.
No, definitely. I want to hear some of the things that you've done.
Well, one of the things is, so I'm going to use my psych degree that I got way back when for 1 whole minute, and it's going to totally make up for how much it cost. So I've been really into part theory recently. I don't know if you're familiar, but I'll kind of give like a brief summary. It's basically honoring what your inner voices are, right? Like our inner manager, our inner dictator, our inner, critic, or all these voices, like the different parts of yourself. And, it's interesting when you say that it has to do with fear, because I think when people hear that something comes from fear, they automatically repel it. But what I've been really trying to honor is like, I have a bunch of voices in my head that like say things to me, and they're not my enemy. They actually each serve a purpose at different times in my life. And the power and the goal is to tap them in and out when it's appropriate. right? So shockingly enough, my inner dictator, the one that's like control, 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 I've named her Paramjeet. Now you take that how you will. But her name is Paramjeet. And she's the one that will convince me like, it has to be this way or this way. It has to be perfect. You need to control this. And so one of the things I've really done is when I'm like entering a scenario planning for a party, even doing this event with you, I'll say like, Paramjeet, this is actually not where I need you. Like, I actually need you to like step away for a second, and this is not the voice I need. But sometimes when I'm in a situation that actually requires me to wrangle and requires me to really take control, I'll be like, all right, Paramjeet, you get to step in and shine right now. So I think just befriending those things instead of trying to solve them and instead of trying to like hide them. And fear is a big component of that. I'm not trying to eradicate myself with fear. It's more so just like, how do I actually work with the fear I know I have and make it more manageable and give myself more grace in that way? That's one thing. And the second thing is way more nerdier, which is my friend actually encouraged me to do this. So every day I have the same things in my pocket. I have 3 things in my pocket every single day. Are you ready? Number 1, a hair tie. You'll understand. Number 2, my chapstick. 2 things I can. But number 3 is a die. Now every day I have a die in my pocket. This is a D&D die, actually. And the goal here is just, Lily, is there a decision in your day that doesn't need you to control, that you can just delegate a small thing? It's, what are you going to eat? What's the movie you're going to watch? Are you going to call this friend? Are you going to play a game of Catan during a break? You just roll the dice, and the die will decide. And it has just taught my brain that, like, look, it's okay. It's okay if you don't control every decision, and it's okay to be a bit flexible. These are the nerdy things, but I take it very seriously. This is why I love your book. Everything, I'm taking it very seriously. Everything you've written about.
No, I love that. I love because when you first pulled out the die, I was thinking, Inception, where it's like a totem. Is this reality? But I love that idea, and I mean, knowing you for a long time, you rolling a die on any decision,
I know.
That's amazing. That's.
I know.
Thank you so much, Lily. That was one of my favorite conversations. So at the end, she talks about holding a die. And so what I started carrying in my pocket is actually the serviette. And the serviette relates to Lily. It's just a serviette. It just says Bell Media on it. I went to a network party. I actually went to this network party with Lily. And the interesting thing was this is like full of TV execs. And the last time I went to a Hollywood party with her, it was a lot of schmoozing and, small talk. And everyone's just saying a bunch of stuff, but they're not really saying stuff. And this time we walked in, and she was on a mission. And she walked up to the president of the whole network, and she goes, "Hey, these are such nice serviettes, really high quality. It lets me know that you can give me more money for my TV show." And it was just instantly said that. And I was just like, and then she called an Uber and we went home. And she's like, "My time is more valuable than the small talk." And I told you, I started writing this book because I was afraid to ask people for help. So now I always think about this overpriced serviette. As like, you don't have time to small talk people, to massage people's egos. Just make the ask. Either they're going to do it or they're not going to do it. So this is my die, and I carry it until it becomes too gross, and I'll have to find another one. But thank you so much, Lily. The thing is, we all want control, and I get it. And there's got to be a healthier alternative to control, and that is going to be structure. And before I talk about structure, I want to do my shameless plug for the book this time. Because what I realized is, I, like many of you, especially you that I can see in the Zoom and read in the chat, we may get the book, we may look through the book, and then we put the book down and never read it, or you take a picture with it, on your lap in the beach, or you take a picture with it with a nice cup of coffee, because it's shelfie culture. And I'm not a fan of this shelfie culture. I get it. It helps people take pictures of books. It helps my Instagram. I post pictures of your guys' books as you guys send them to me, and it's great. But this is the book that I deeply, with all my heart, and you guys can hold me to this, people are going to read this, and they're going to make it go viral. So I am going to make a very specific request. Buy 2 copies. And I'm going to explain why. We need an accountability buddy. I've had parents reach out to me, "My daughter needs this book." And I'm saying, no, don't buy this for your daughter. Buy this with your daughter. Buy 2 copies. Read it together. Every chapter in this book is only 2 to 4 pages, which means it will only take about 5 to 6 minutes to read a chapter, which means you and your children You and your spouse, you and your parents, you and your best friend, you and your reading club. You guys can read the chapter together. The book says 50 simple truths. There's more than 50 chapters. There's actually 52. There's an intro, which I call chapter 0, and there's an outro, which I call chapter infinity, which means there are 52 chapters, just like 52 weeks in the year, which means you and your reading buddy can read one chapter a week together, not homework. You guys sit together, sit on FaceTime together, sit on Zoom together, read the chapter, talk about the chapter, practice. Remember, your body can only catch up to your brain through practice. Practice what you learn from the chapter throughout the week, and then do it again next week. And now you have a 1-year journey that will improve your relationship with your reading buddy. And you can have 3 reading buddies. Get 3 copies. I'm not mad. My puppy's got expensive habits. By all means, order 3 copies. But instead of buying this book and putting it down after you take a selfie with it, if you get 2 copies, share it with somebody that you care about. This is an opportunity for you to create a connection. We talked earlier about being vulnerable, being afraid, but vulnerability is the only way we can create a meaningful connection with somebody. So there should be a QR code somewhere down here. You can scan that and get yourself a copy. For all of you wonderful people who already have a copy, you shouldn't be doing this alone. Community is the antidote to anxiety. We live in a hyper-individualistic society that tells us to be by ourselves, do everything by ourselves. No, anxiety is not a you problem. It's not a me problem. It's an us problem that requires an us solution. So get 2 copies, share it with somebody you care about. This book is written at a grade 6 level. There's no big words in this book. Trust me. I edited it. My editor is in the back room right now. She knows how many edits I redid for this book to make it as simple as possible. This is at a grade 6 level. If you have children 10 and above, they can read this book with you. Giving them their own copy so they can highlight, they can dog ear, they can rip out pages. I just read the Rick Rubin book. I tore out pages and put them in frames and hung them on my wall. Let's not be precious about books, okay? These are here for us to learn, okay? Get a friend, create a community, and grow together. In the bonus section, which now that you bought 2 copies, you get to be a part of the VIP section, I'm going to be talking about a very vulnerable experience I had with a friend where he said we were going to a spa, and he mixed up the word spa and sauna, and it was an all-nude sauna in Germany. And I'm going to talk about the anxiety I had to face being in an all-nude sauna in Germany. And it's going to be part of my presentation in the VIP section. Now, the reason I'm trying to give this structure is to make sure that we actually read it, because I don't just need people to get it. I need people to read it. Structure is the antidote for us being control freaks. So think about it this way. Structure is like having a roadmap. Control is like trying to change the shape of the roads, okay? This book is full of ways that we can create structure, boundaries, habits, daily practices, daily ideas, things that we can actually physically do. You cannot think your way out of anxiety. You can only act your way out of it. And my conversation with Angel, I'm going to preview this conversation with Angel, and then later in the VIP section, for all the people who get the book, we're going to be doing activities so we can act our way through anxiety. Angel is one of my favorite people. I met her exactly a year ago at a Hay House event. I did a talk on anxiety. And during the talk on anxiety, I was referring to our relationship with dopamine. You know, we all love the reward center dopamine. It's why we're on our phones. It's why we watch TV. It's why we gamble. It's why we do all the different things that we do. We love dopamine. And I refer to us as dopamine crackheads. So like we have a little dopamine crackhead in our head. And it was something that people said you might not want to say in a presentation. And I said it in the presentation. And Angel came up to me. I had no idea who she was. And she said to me, I love that you said dopamine crackhead. I walked into this room not expecting to hear those words put together. And it's something I actually kind of have, the chapter in the book is called the overthinking crackhead hamster running on the wheel. And it's about the idea that we overthink. And later on, as I kept chatting with Angel, I found out that she was the inventor of the Passion Planner, which was the very first project on Kickstarter to raise over $1 million. And she is so kind, so wonderful. She taught me how to be nice to myself, how to be even nicer to myself. I would describe myself in ways. I remember specifically, I said, I love to argue, I love to debate. And she was like, no, that just means you care about things. And it was a really interesting, I said, sometimes when I'm in a relationship, I might have a wandering eye. And she's like, no, that means you appreciate beauty. She just found these really kind ways to make me reduce how much I judge myself and find different ways to frame it. And we heard Matthew Hussey talk about how curiosity really is an antidote to a lot of this. The opposite of judgment is curiosity. I was reading some of the comments and people were talking about where they think they need to be. We're judging ourselves. Judgment is the language of fear, while curiosity is courage in disguise. So I want you to see this conversation I have with Angel. It's a preview of what we're going to be doing in the VIP section. Enjoy.
So I want to teach this exercise that I use whenever I feel overwhelmed. If I feel overwhelmed, and usually my indicators for feeling overwhelmed is I get snappy, I feel like everything is urgent. This is the exercise that I use, and it takes 3 to 5 minutes to just slow down, turn on the light in my head to kind of see everything that is swirling around in there. So this exercise is really to take those concept or those floating around ideas and put them down on paper so I can see them and I can devise some sort of plan to tackle them, or honestly decide I don't really want to do that thing. I can just let that go now. So the exercise that I want to teach everyone today is what I call brain vomiting. It's my version of brain dumping, and what brain dumping helps you do is very much like you said, is accept yourself where you are right now. Because a lot of times, a lot of people have, at least for me, I have a lot of thoughts in my head. I have ADHD and dyslexia. So for me, I'm neurodivergent and my mind works in a very different way. And I like thinking in mind maps. So if you don't know what a mind map is, a mind map looks something like this. It's a main idea in the middle with sub ideas branching out. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a mind map of our current mind right now, because the way that I think about the brain is it's kind of like a computer. And when you have like 100 tabs open, like I do often, that is really hard on the brain. So it's important to take some time. In this case, it'll be about 3 to 5 minutes to just write down everything that's going on in your brain without any judgment. And this is where the kindness comes in, and giving yourself grace to just be really honest. Like no one else needs to look at this paper. I'm not going to tell you to share it with anyone. And Humble's going to be doing this exercise too. And again, it's a space for no judgment, for you to just take whatever's going on in your mind and put it down on paper, because effectively you get to close the tab and tell your brain, hey, it's chilling here on this piece of paper. It's safe. We can go out and be present in other things in our life instead of feeling like we have to carry all these things in our every day. So the first step is to have a piece of paper. You could do it in a journal. You could do it in a notebook. You could, but I love paper because doing things on paper, it's tactile. So you're moving something from being really abstract to being physical. So that's, for me, that is one of the most cathartic ways to get my ideas out. So we're going to write the date on the middle, in the middle. So today is April 3rd. And then I usually like to write a little rectangle around it. That's just something that I like to do. So you're going to write.
Oh, a 3D rectangle. Okay, we're competing.
I went to art school.
Okay, we're competing. I get
it. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to just write a line and then a thought. So I have to book cat sitters today. That's something that I have in my mind. So I will write that connected to a line and just keep going for as long as you want. But today we're only going to go for about 3 minutes, and we'll start now. All right. So, what did you learn or gain? What are your initial thoughts of doing that after doing that exercise?
I think what it definitely helps me realize is things are way heavier in my head than they are on the page.
Yeah.
Um, and definitely a lot of anxious feelings that are inspired by some of these things on the list um, come from a made up idea that they're urgent. It's
Yeah.
almost as because I thought of it, I have to address it right now. And that's not actually or factually the case. I just have to get to it eventually, but it doesn't have to be like nothing, nothing on this page is more important than this conversation. And
Yeah.
but it still held weight. And then I think the last thing I noticed was as I got through like the immediate, and then I took a few more seconds to think, then like kind of a deeper layer of things that has constantly been giving me tension, kind of themes that don't feel like they're on a to-do list, just themes about people I care about, their health, their certain situations, their stories. So after I got like, oh, I got to book a trip to Chicago, I got to get that out of my head. After that, it was like thinking about my family, thinking about, the people I care about in my life and what I know they're going through and how that's also, giving me a little bit of tension thinking about it.
100%. I mean, I think that is like the common experience. It's, whoa, I have so many things I have to do. And then there's a deeper layer if you take the time of there are things that are important, but they're not urgent, but they're actually more important than the urgent stuff.
Yes.
And oftentimes, urgency makes us feel so much more stressed that we have to really use our intention to decide, is this truly urgent or is this not? So the next part of this activity is to write a star on the things that you think would really make your life better or improve your life. And you can choose one or two things. Okay. So kind of to give people an example, I'm kind of at here right now. I have my mind map and I have a star. And then what I will do next is I will then write to do, usually what I do at this point is I schedule that most important thing into my calendar. So what I'll do is I'll estimate how long I think each of these things will take. And if it's just if it's just a feeling, then maybe there's not a time, but every task takes time. So I think that people are like, it's time management and that's super important. I'm like, yes, but having intentionality about how you're using your time and making sure that you're spending your time in the ways that are in alignment with how you want to live your life, this is more important, I think. So for me, like when I first started doing exercises like this, I would always be like, okay, what can I do to advance my career? And I'm kind of at this place now where I'm thinking, what can I do to make my life feel more fulfilling for me? Which is a big shift. But what I've realized is if I don't make space for the peace won't happen. Like I will just keep cranking and hustling. So the next step would be to write like how many minutes you think each of these things would take, and then transfer them into your Google Calendar, your planner, whatever time management system you have. Because once you start assigning time blocks to things, they become much less stressful because you understand I've budgeted time for that. I know I'm going to get to that. So now you can go out and have dinner with a friend and not have to worry about, oh, when am I going to do these 4 other things that I need to remember? Really, time blocking in conjunction with like this exercise, like brain dumping, is super, super powerful, and making sure that you feel less anxious about all you have to do and you feel more, I guess, more budgeted of how you plan on tackling all of these tasks. So that's the exercise I want to share.
Thank you so much, Angel. So Angel is going to be a part of the VIP session, which immediately follows this. So for all those who got the book, just stay on, and the VIP session will be there. And what I realized, too, is even doing that activity, is like we have so much in our brains, and it feels so heavy. And then the second you write it down, you're like, wait, that wasn't so heavy. That wasn't so much. And it really is just kind of getting things outside. So some of the activities that we're going to be doing in the VIP section are going to be really, really, really interesting. As I said, the big thing here is what's in our heads. Our brain might connect with this a lot quicker than our bodies, and we have to practice. And one of the things I got so lucky that the publishers allowed me to do is on the inside cover of the book, I'm gonna come all the way up there. Can I get it clear? I can't get. Oh, I got a little bit clear. So what I have on the inside cover of the book is I have activities, but we broke down the activities in terms of low effort, medium effort, and high effort. Because you probably heard someone say like, well, if I meditate, that would be great for anxiety. Yeah, but meditation is high effort. And maybe something low effort is what I would consider calf raises. Just lifting your calves up and down and doing this till your legs fall off. And then your legs fall off and you don't feel anxious anymore. And you might have a different problem. But there are different levels to the activities that we can do immediately when we're feeling having anxious feelings, before to prevent them, or even after to reflect on them. Now, my next guest is also live, so I don't want to spend too much time introducing them. Her name is Mindbody Nina, and while I was writing this book, I'd come up with really cool ideas, do some really cool research, and think to myself, ooh, like, you got it. You got some really cool ideas. And then I'd watch a video by Mindbody Nina, and she would say the same things, just better, while doing a cartwheel in the middle of the video. And I'd be like, ooh. So she was one of the very first people that I reached out to, slid into DMs, reached out to her specifically to read the book. And I got nothing but validating feedback on it, which made me feel amazing. Met her just by seeing her content. She's been sharing amazing energy, and discovered her on Instagram, and we connected that way. And she has a brilliant and inspiring story about not only helping other people live much more bold and rich lives, but also she was recently diagnosed with cancer, and how she was able to use some of her own coaching to approach that. So without further ado, I want to introduce you. I had to grab my little clicker. I want to introduce you to Mindbody Nina. Hey.
Hey, hey.
How you feeling? How you doing?
I'm good. I like you threw the little cartwheel bit in there.
Yeah, you do cartwheels, and you jump off trees, and you jump on trees, and you do all the things, and then there I am just being like, this is amazing. But I have so many questions for you, and I wrote them all down, and they're in such tiny font, so I'm going to walk up close because my eyes suck. We might have to switch cameras just because I have to stand right here while I talk to you. Oh, here we go. That's also still too small. Here we go. So
Ooh, that is small.
It is very small. Oh, you can see my questions?
Kind of. Too small.
Okay.
I hope you can see them.
I can barely see them. I haven't got my eyes checked in forever. You said you were once a free spirit, but you're still paralyzed by indecision and fear. What did it feel like to live with that kind of invisible anxiety? The kind that looks like dramatic on the outside, but is really quietly shaping every choice you make.
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is something I love, is that your questions can really show how much you've introspected just by the way you ask things. But I think it was a lot like holding up, if you held up these fingers to somebody and you said, how many fingers am I holding up? And they kept saying 3. And you were looking and you're like, I swear this is 2. I swear this is 2. But people kept saying 3. And eventually over time, you're starting to think, okay, maybe this is 3. And I'm just questioning my own reality. Maybe I'm not experiencing what I think I'm experiencing. And, not necessarily expressing all of the anxiety was not always from a place of, oh, I think I have to hide it, I can't show people, but being so accustomed to being a strong person and wanting to be strong for other people, and that being my norm, that I wouldn't even know that I was doing it. So having that anxiety, questioning a lot of things, and having that paralyzing feeling is hard when you realize you've been doing it, and kind of a shock when you realize I never knew I was doing it before. But it also gives you that opportunity to allow your outer world and your inner world to realign.
I love that idea of just the alignment of our outer world and our inner world. So I don't know if you've seen the setup. You're on my corner screens. So I'm looking at you, and I'm looking at you, and I got my notes in the middle. So last summer, I think you announced that you were diagnosed with cancer. And, you said it didn't push you into boldness. Sometimes we hear the cliche of somebody getting such, life-changing news, and it makes them live more fuller. You said it didn't push you into boldness. It pulled you deeper into fear.
Yes.
So what was the turning point where something inside you shifted and said, I can't keep living like this?
Yeah, I think, pushing me into fear was exactly where I needed to go. because I was somebody who was holding it together for so long, being strong for so long. And something that kind of spoke for me, I always say that, like, I feel like cancer spoke what I couldn't speak myself. And because of that diagnosis, it pulled me so deep into fear. I was like, what am I doing wrong? I thought I was healthy. I'm like young. I'm doing all the right things, which was humbling because it's like, okay, well, what are the right things if I thought I was doing all of them? But it pulled me into fear. And that's exactly where I had to go, because the fear was what allowed me to go deeper. And it was what allowed me to really ask myself, what's going on under the surface and am I okay? And I was a therapist, I was a counselor, a social worker, and I did mental health for a living, and I was somebody who was so introspective. So for me to be pulled into fear and ask myself, am I okay, was something I already thought I was asking myself. But I think when that level of fear is present and there's a diagnosis like that on the line, it pulls you so deep that you're like, maybe I'm kind of BSing myself. Like maybe my I'm actually fine is not true. Maybe I can keep going a little bit deeper and seeing if that has been a survival protective mechanism instead of the actual core truth.
I love that. Always think about that Mike Tyson quote, which is like, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And it's like we can, so often we can talk about, all these great ideas and all these inspiring quotes and all these cliche advice. And then we get punched in the mouth. Like, like your diagnosis, you're caught off guard, and all of a sudden it's like, well, now I actually have to get tested on this. And you talked about slowly resigning from your own life. There's something that many people can feel that, but they may not be able to name it. What are the quiet signs that someone might be doing that? And how can they begin to choose themselves first?
Yeah. So some of the signs could be kind of similar in the same like ballpark as depression. So it might be like you're not really reaching out for help anymore. You've kind of taken a back seat and you're like, I'm just gonna like deal with this. I'm not gonna reach out. I'm not gonna talk to my friends as much and express what's going on in my life, or I'm not gonna reach out and ask for help. I'm just gonna kind of like deal with things, avoid them, numb them. Whether you're realizing that you're doing that or not is its own topic and project, but you can start to notice like you're pulling back from a lot of the full engagement of your life. So like your relationships, you might be avoiding conflict. You might be like not taking care of your space as much and yourself as much. You might be, when people talk to you and ask you how things are going, you're kind of just like, yeah, I'm good, but you don't feel that full connection to your own truth and what you're saying and your own voice. You just feel like you're here, and then there's like this other spacey you over here who's like in the world, but they're two different people.
So how did you regain? So in terms of like, for example, like your relationship with control definitely must have changed, because this is something that's completely out of your hands. And, as I said, like sometimes in our world, and for order for us to have some semblance or the illusion of control, we'll either like focus on what's in our control and ignore the rest, or just be in complete avoidance. So, how did your relationship with control change during this healing, especially when you have to face something like this that is completely out of your hands? Or is it out of your hands?
Some things are out of my hands, and I think for everyone some things are out of our hands, but I feel like we try to control the things we can't control, and we don't control the things that we actually can control. Like we're like, oh, I can't control that, but we can. Or we do it the other way around. We think we can control what we can't. So there is, I think, this sense of knowing where you do have a sense of responsibility and power, and being able to bring your focus there instead of trying to grab onto and hold on to the things that you don't have control over. But that takes practice too. But I tried to hold on and really grab everything until I had no choice but to surrender. I never chose surrender. I was like exhausted, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I can like hear my nails on the walls like screeching, trying to hold on to everything. But the reality was like, eventually you're going to get so tired and burnt out from that you're going to have to like throw up your arms and say, okay, I can't do this anymore. I just have to let go and see what the heck happens. And that was so freeing and liberating for me.
So a lot of people, when I mean a lot of people, I mean me. We say we're stuck in this loop of I'll feel better when dot dot dot. So I'll feel better when my book comes out. I'll feel better when this event is over. I'll feel better when I get back home. I'll feel better when, and we just keep deferring, kind of feeling better. And you flipped that on its head, and you started showing, you started showing up before things were figured out. What would you say to someone who feels like they have to wait to heal before they can be happy?
That's an awesome question. I would ask, like, what are you waiting for? That's it. Because most people will be like, well, I'm waiting for the cancer to go away, the money to come, the situation to change, or this person to be different. And it's like, okay, so let's even just pretend like that's gonna happen. If that could happen right now in this instant, then what? And it's like, well, then I would be, would you? It's that question of, we always have something to kind of outsource. There's always a next thing. And because I had so many stressors all at once happening, and probably the most in my whole life, life actually, in a weird way, became fun. Not immediately. Let's not get that wrong. Not immediately, but it became fun to say, okay, you know what? Maybe I don't have as much control as I think I do. And that letting go and being like, let's see what happens and let me take a different approach to life is so freeing. And it made me feel like a child again, to be honest, like looking through new childlike eyes instead of like doing this adult thing where we're like, I know things, I'm responsible, I know how to do things, and we're so experienced and whatever. It was just a much more innocent, naive, novice way of approaching everything.
I love that. And I think one of the things in the spirit of this event that I really wanted to have is I did not want to have a guest on here acting like they figured everything out. And they were like, there's a before, the people in the audience are the before and the guests are the after. It's like, no, we're all kind of swimming in this mud together. And you've been through some stuff. Like you went through an incredibly uncertain season. You drained your savings, you questioned your passion, and you still, and the word I have here is peace, but we're going to say equanimity. You had a healthier relationship with your emotions after all of that. What did that teach you about where real safety and joy come from?
Yeah. Of course, the answer is not from the external, and not that the external doesn't matter, because I think it's easy to say like, oh, we should all be peaceful and we should not have to depend on anything outside of ourselves, and we should just be able to be completely happy every day with regardless of what's going on. But I think what it really taught me is that at least for me, and a lot of my life, I was waiting until I felt good every single day. I was like, there will be a time where I'm going to just like feel good all the time. There's going to be a time where everything is working out. And there are little moments in life like that. But I think just embracing all of it is what gives us that feeling of like, okay, I'm here, I'm present, I'm in it. And that feels really good, instead of wanting everything to look a certain way. So perspective is huge, to answer your question more specifically.
I think it's also this idea that a lot of us are feeling like we're in survival mode. We're doing so much work just to keep our lips above water. And I know the anxious feelings that come from that really are like our body not trusting our mind. It's like a disconnect, which makes us afraid to try. That's why we have this illusion, I got to be ready. I got to be ready before I try. Even though we know, and our personal history show us, we had to try before we were ready, and that's where the confidence and the motivation came from. But what is one small thing our viewers can do today to reconnect and to begin trusting life a little bit more again today?
Yeah, this is my favorite one, but everyone likes to act like they're too good for this one. And it's just slowing down. Everybody likes to, like, when I love working with my one-on-one clients, and I'm like, first you have to slow down. Like, slow down your voice, slow down your movement, let yourself be a little bit slower. And everyone wants to be like, yeah, I know that already, but like, tell me something good and juicy. Like, tell me something actually like juicy that's gonna change my life. And it is a lot of the time in the basic things, in the simple things. And you talk about this in your book, but it's the simple things that can go such a long way. Because when we start to slow down, then that protective part of us is going to be like, no, you have to speed up because this isn't safe. But what happens when you do slow down and you let that feeling come of discomfort, it's like then you start to feel things. And nobody likes usually what comes up when you start slowing down, but actually feeling it, really being there with those feelings, even if it's painful, even if it's, aches and you're getting like these weird sensations in your body, it's whatever has to come up finally coming up. So slow down.
I love that. It's one of the lies that our anxious feelings kind of whisper in our ears. Everything's urgent. Someone texted message you right now, you must reply right now. You can't reply in 5 minutes. If you don't know the answer, then it's totally, if you haven't achieved everything right now, it's an issue. And it really is slowing down and breathing with intention and doing all of that. I really want to commend you and thank you for coming on. There was my wish list of guests was a combination of having some people that, our audience would know, people our audience would be introduced to, and I really wanted to make sure the audience got to see you and your work. Please follow Mindbody Nina. It's I keep calling her Mindbody Nina. She's got a full government name, and I can't pronounce your last name, so we're going to call you Mindbody Nina. But it's at Mindbody Nina. Your content is awesome. It's everything I would do if I could climb a tree, but I can't. So we'll just leave it to you. We'll leave it to the experts. But thank you so much for spending your time and being on here with us live. We really appreciate it. And, we wish you all the best on your health journey. We know you've been making amazing progress. Things are looking good. And please keep documenting it and letting us know how you're doing.
Thank you so much. Loved this conversation.
Again, thank you so much. That was Mindbody Nina. I got to walk over here to get my clicker so I can remember what's happening next. I have a chapter in the book where I talk about drinking a meal replacement shake. I had a Zoom call. I was busy. I drank this meal replacement shake on the call. It's like socially acceptable to drink shakes on calls but not eat food for some reason. Probably because I'd get French fries in my beard. But I drink this shake. I do the call, everything is great, and then all of a sudden, I go outside to walk my dog, and I am completely overwhelmed. I'm freaking out. It seems like the cars are faster, the people are louder, everything is just completely overwhelming me, and I'm having a panic attack. And I'm just trying to figure out, what's going on? What's happening? I'm asking myself. I'm not just saying I'm anxious. I'm saying what Humble the Poet said we should say. I feel anxious because. So I'm like, I feel anxious because the meeting went poorly. I feel anxious because the cars are extra loud. What am I feeling anxious because? And I was like, what was different? And I was like, oh, the shake. So I Googled the shake, and other people talked about having panic attacks with the shake. And you got to realize it's like it's not just external factors, it's also what we put into our body and our relationship with our health. And the simplest way, if you're not trying to get the book, is drink more water, get more sleep, stay away from jerks. But also, the food that we put into our system, and that's not always in our control. Some parts of the world, clean food is more expensive. In some parts of the world, access to clean food isn't really there. Some of us, I've been on a book tour for the last 2 weeks, and I've been eating McDonald's breakfast every day. That's kind of my love language when I'm on the road. And that's why I wear baggy suits. And but the thing is, you got to be kind with yourself when it happens temporarily. But overall, when that's happening, we got to be mindful of it. So it's not just mental health that we have to concern ourselves with, it is our physical health. And it really is important that what we put into our body impacts how we feel. Now, we can control what we put into our body, but can we control our own personal history, right? We've heard these terms like generational trauma, what our ancestors have gone through. I cite a study in the book which talks about Holocaust survivors, how there was an imprint and change in their DNA that went through to the descendants, which means if you were a descendant of a Holocaust survivor, there was a change to your DNA. And actually, your neuroses, your ability to detect danger or imagine danger, it increases based off what happened to people previous generations, not even you. And I think that's really important because there is a whole factor when it comes to having anxious feelings that relates to things that are just in our software. just how we were born, where we were born, what we relate to. And my next guest in the next conversation that we had is Charlamagne the God, and we had this conversation about previous experiences, not just experiences from previous ancestors or previous generations, but also just from things that happened to us in childhood. You know, think about it. We were dealing with that stuff when we were really young, and we may not know. So check out this conversation I had with Charlamagne, and we'll talk a little bit about it after.
Hi, I'm Charlamagne the God.
Charlamagne, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate it because you are such an important voice in the mental health community. I'm just going to read you some questions and let me know your thoughts. So you've been really open and honest about your journey to improve your mental health. Looking back, what is the biggest difference between Charlamagne today and Charlamagne in 2015?
I think it's a lot of differences. I can't point to one thing, but the first thing that comes to mind is more of a sense of worthiness. I think that when you don't deal with a lot of the issues that you may be dealing with, it gives you a lot of things that cause you to doubt yourself, which causes a lot of imposter syndrome, and you never quite feel worthy of being in any space. You never feel quite worthy of being in any position. You never feel quite worthy of being in any relationship. And so for me, I feel like, just doing the work on myself, gave me a real sense of worthiness. So if I had to say, what's changed, between me starting therapy in 2016 to now, is definitely a real sense of worthiness.
In your book, Shook One, you talk about how past trauma and culture shapes anxiety. What's something that you had to unlearn to start managing yours in a healthier way?
Oh man, everything. I mean, not only just unlearning things from your childhood, you unlearn things that you actually learned in hip hop, in this culture. It's a beautiful culture, but I do think, like I wrote about in my new book, Get Honest or Die Lying, a lot of things that we talk about are a death style as opposed to a lifestyle. So whether it's the excessive alcohol use or, drug use, not being faithful to your woman, like it's a lot of different things that can hinder you and, just hinder your growth as a person. So, I'm 46 years old, man. Like Muhammad Ali said, the person who thinks the same way at 50 as they did when they were 20, they wasted 30 years of their life. I haven't wasted, a moment. Like when you ask me what I've unlearned, it's damn near everything. There's so many things that I thought, would be with me all throughout my life, but you realize they were only, in you to get you to a certain position. And then once you get to that certain position, it won't get you where you need to be. So the simplest way to put it is what got you here won't take you there. So for me, I'm always about constant growth, constant evolution. So I know that I just got to constantly keep learning. But when you ask me what I've unlearned, damn near everything for the most part. Especially a lot of things that my dad instilled in me. Because my dad raised me, I always say my dad raised me out of fear and not love. And that's something that I had to learn how to do. I had to learn how to move through life with love and not fear. Because him raising me that way instilled that in me. So a lot of that anxiety that came from, things that he instilled in me. So yeah, learning to move with love and not fear is probably one of the biggest things I unlearned.
You've been real about therapy being a game changer for you. What's one lesson from therapy that more people need to hear?
That therapy can't heal you. Therapy can give you the language to help you identify your issues. Therapy can help pinpoint your issues. I went to therapy because I was dealing with anxiety and bouts of depression. Therapy will help you realize why you're dealing with that anxiety and those bouts of depression, but therapy will not help you heal any of those things. So after you go to therapy and you learn the language and you identify what it is you're dealing with, you also have to then take the next step, which is actually going out there and going on a real healing journey.
In your newest book, Get Honest or Die Trying, you talk about the anxiety of sharing an idea and the fear of rejection, but also how the fear gets outweighed by the need to put the idea out in the world. How did you develop that mindset? And how can people push past their fears instead of hiding behind small talk?
Because when you believe in art, you know that art is subjective. You know that there's going to be people that love your art, there's going to be people that hate your art, there's going to be people that don't even care about your art, there's going to be people that don't know about your art, but it's your art. So as long as I know I create the best possible product, I create the best possible content, if I know the intention of my words, I'm not afraid to put it out there, and I'm willing to deal with whatever comes from that. You know, two of the greatest lessons I ever learned, my dad, when he told me that you're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are. That's a great lesson to keep in mind, especially navigating through this new era where everybody got an opinion of you. And my man Cadillac Jack, you know, one of my great mentors in radio, he said, always remember the law of 10. He literally said specifically, Charlamagne, I want you to remember this law of 10. 3 people gonna like it, 3 people not gonna like it, 4 people don't even know what the hell's going on. And that's how I carry it.
Let's be honest. A lot of people are scared to be vulnerable because they think it makes them look weak. And Get Honest or Die Lying, you openly talk about being molested and abused. How did you get to a place where you could share that truth?
Well, when I used to say it all of the time, I used to say it because it used to make people laugh. You know what I'm saying? I used to be like, when I was 8 years old, which is all true, I used to get, you know, molested by a family member. I think she was in like her 20s or something at the time, and I was 8. And I remember having them little firecrackers and little poppers used to throw on the ground, and they would pop. And so I had some, and I was just throwing them at her. Pop, 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 stay away from me, stay away from me, stay away from me. And in my mind, well, 2 things. In my mind, I would say that I made her stop because I didn't like the smell of her Jerry curl. And so that would always get a laugh out of people, so I would say that. But then the reality of the situation is I just knew it wasn't right, and that is actually what led to me being a people pleaser, because after I made her stop doing it, she started calling me ugly and saying I had a big nose, and so that made me be like, well, damn, I'm just gonna let her do it because I don't want to hear her say that. So that was one of those moments that carried on with me to adulthood. When you asked me earlier what's something I had to unlearn, that was one of those things, because it literally made me a people pleaser to where I would allow people to do me dirty as long as it made everything comfortable. So even though I was super uncomfortable, and even though I was the person that was dealing with the BS, as long as it kept, you know, people from talking bad about me or saying negative things about me, I was willing to accept it. And now it's like, nah, I don't play that in no way, shape, or form. So yeah, I mean, I just wasn't afraid to talk about it because, number one, it used to get laughs out of people, and now I'm not afraid to talk about it because it's a very empowering story for me. Because I remember having a conversation with Bishop T.D. Jakes, and he was saying even that's where a lot of my sense of unworthiness came from, because he said that people who usually deal with abuse when they're young grow up feeling like they're not worthy. And so just learning all of those different things, you know, hearing things like Bishop T.D. Jakes, and just knowing that there's a lot of people who are people pleasers, and knowing that, you know, me having that conversation allows them to stop being people pleasers themselves, it's worth talking about.
So one thing I noticed about you is that service is a big theme in your life. You once told me God doesn't care who I help, he just cares that I help. How does that mindset shape the way you deal with anxiety, success, and the way that you move through the world?
Because that's your true purpose in life. Your true purpose in life comes through service of others. You know, Dr. Wayne W. Dyer, The Power of Intention, that's what he said. And I remember being young and, you know, not having no money, not being in a position to assist people and provide opportunities, and just trying to figure out, you know, how can I be of service in this world? And I think about my grandma. Whenever people would come to my grandma's house, my grandma would make sure they ate. If they was at my daddy's little, you know, sugar shack in the country, my dad would make sure they had a drink. My dad would make sure that people ate. And that goes a long way. And so I always tried to be of service to people in some way, shape, or form, because that's actually what's fulfilling to me. You know, I always say, if anything you build only benefits you, it's not big enough. And, you know, growing up, we have all of these conversations about, you know, what people should be doing, especially black people when they get in certain positions. Like, make it easier for the next person. You know, be the adult that you needed as a child, or be the homie that you needed when you was on the come up. That's what I strive to be for people. So, you know, being of service is literally your only purpose on this planet. And anybody can serve. Like, you know, serving isn't just, you know, helping somebody get some money. Serving is literally what I just said. Like, you might walk out of here and you might have 2 bottles of water. There's a homeless person who don't got none. Get that person a bottle of water. You know, service might be, you know, I don't know, helping an old lady with her groceries coming out of the grocery store. Like, there's so many different ways that you can serve. So just find a way to be of service to others.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlamagne. I just want to say, so Charlamagne, you know, somebody put my earliest book on his desk, and then he invited me to be on his show, The Breakfast Club, which is one of the most syndicated radio shows on earth, and it completely changed my life. The thing also with that is, the only times he's ever reached out to me for help was always to help somebody else. You know, so I'm Punjabi Sikh, and we have this concept called seva, which is service, and he embodies that. And oftentimes we feel so much anxiety because we're stuck in our own heads, stuck in our own lives. And service helps remind you that other people exist, and you're not going to have anxious feelings while you're serving other people. So thank you so much, Charlamagne, for that. Now, folks watching this on YouTube, this is your last chance to become a part of the VIP. I hope you see how we curated such an amazing guest list and amazing conversations that will actually help you deal with anxious feelings. No fluff, no woo-woo, no empty quotes, practical, pragmatic, vulnerable conversations with real people going through real things. This is why I want you to get the book and join the VIP conversations, because that's going to be me doing a presentation on the recipe for resilience, as well as more activities with Angel that are going to further, on the spot, melt anxious feelings. We're going to create a lot more structure there. Again, I'm a big proponent on having an accountability buddy. Get this for you and a friend. Get this for you and your child. Get this for you and your parent. Get this for you and a sibling. Get this for you and your book club. When 2 of you are doing it, you guys can lean on each other. I need help. That's the thing that I struggle with, asking for help. Saying I need help to stick to reading a book, because obviously looking at my phone is a lot easier. Working together. And this is how I wish you structure it. You guys both get the book, and you guys read the chapters beside each other on FaceTime, on Zoom, and then you talk about it. Talk about the parts you liked, talk about the parts you didn't like, talk about the parts you didn't understand. And the goal is to have a conversation about the book. The more we talk about our emotions, the better we feel. That's part of feeling our feelings. Disinfecting our feelings through the sun by getting them out. When we allow them to live in our heads, that's when we start to have extra anxious feelings. The goal of unanxious isn't to fix you because you're not broken. The goal of unanxious is to empower you to have a better relationship with your emotions. The most misunderstood emotion we have is anxiety. We think it's a problem. We think it's a disease. It's not. You'll understand through reading the book, anxiety is just a really misinformed bodyguard trying to protect you, but it doesn't know what's really dangerous. Scan the QR code below, get a copy for you and somebody you care about and you want them to feel better,